So when it comes to ICP, supposedly this has begun. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about Dominic Williams very recently made a post saying how we're kicking off Mission 70. However, before I explain what Mission 70 is, I first want to quote Dominic again because he does say imminently DFINITY will post an NSS proposal to increase on-chain replicated subnet memory costs by a measured amount. But yeah, that's kind of the more complicated part. Let's just take a look at this in a more simple way, right? Because actually back in early February, so earlier this month, DFINITY developers made a post. And it kind of highlights what Mission 70 is. And this is what I'm going to explain, right? So supposedly Mission 70 is a strategic plan to cut ICP inflation by 70% by the end of 2026. However, they say this involves shifting to 2-year dissolve delays, optimizing node rewards, and scaling cycle burns. If there is a strategic plan to cut ICP inflation by 70% by the end of 2026, isn't that a pretty cool thing? At least in my perspective. And again, very recently, Dominic Williams just said how, we're kicking off Mission 70. So really in the grand scheme of things, I think this is pretty cool because if, let's say, in a more broad example, if, let's say, a project had less of a supply that was available, wouldn't that just make it more rare, right? Because, again, if there's high demand yet low supply, again, isn't that usually kind of a cool thing during a hypothetical altcoin season? So in the grand scheme of things, I think this quote-unquote Mission 70 is a pretty cool thing. Now, granted, in the grand scheme of things, we'll have to see the long-term effects because, again, I'll have to wait and see before I could really fully evaluate it, but at least the idea, at least the intent is there. That's the way you take a look at it. Now, ICP, it's recovered a little bit. Is it as a result of this? I don't think that much necessarily. I mean, we're seeing some altcoins recover too. It's not only ICP. However, at the same time, I think this maybe could have a little bit of an impact, right? Indirectly, because of course this could be argued as a pretty cool thing for the future of ICP. So ICP now being around 41.5 times lower than $100, it's still down by a lot, right? In the grand scheme of things, comparatively to where it once was in 2025, it's still down by quite a significant amount. But at least if I see slight recovery, I am not going to be necessarily complaining because if a project that I'm a fan of has a recovery, why not? That's the way to take a look at it. Even though at lower points, I don't mind for dollar cost averaging anyways, but if it has a recovery, why not, right? Because sure, I'd like to dollar cost average at lower points, but I don't want it to be that way forever, right? That's the way to take a look at it. But besides that point though, if I just take a look at DFINITY overall, I feel like their objective when it comes to the internet computer seems very solid, right? Because, of course, we see them trying to push this narrative of wanting to have things run fully on chain. Also, on top of that, we take a look at Caffeine AI, a self-writing apps platform. So, really, in the grand scheme of things, I just think it's pretty cool overall what I'm seeing. Also, I take a look at what they did with Chain Fusion. I mean, that was pretty cool as well. So yeah, I think that overall, the internet computer, I just don't view it as a bad project. Is it ever going to become like the best of all time in terms of popularity? Probably not, but it doesn't need to anyways, in my opinion. So in the meantime, if DFINITY is still doing things, if I still see Mission 70 supposedly, kind of being kicked off, right? Supposedly sort of being started right there, I do find it pretty cool. Now, of course, when it comes to ICP and $100, people like to say, okay, that sounds kind of ridiculous, but the market cap actually at that point would be around 55 billion. A market cap, by the way, that is around 30 billion less than a market cap in which Dogecoin once reached in 2021. That was years ago, right? Dogecoin in 2021, at one point, the market cap was over 80 billion. So is this like something so ridiculous? Keep in mind, if we take a look at the amount of owners as of right now, as we speak, it's actually arguably a lot more than the peak of the 2021 cycle, which sometimes is a little bit hard to believe, right? Because the altcoin space was doing so amazing back then. As of right now, it's not doing that good. But actually, at the peak of the 2021 cycle, we're taking a look at around 300 million owners. Right now, there's supposedly over 600 million without an altcoin season, right? And we already have this many. So what happens if there's actually an altcoin season, hypothetically? Like if there was like 800, 900 million owners or whatever, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me at that point. But again, this is just my mindset. So what would ICP do then? Would around $100 be something so ridiculous at around a 55 billion market cap considering the current circulating supply? I don't know if that sounds so ridiculous to me, but that's just my mindset, especially when I consider just the increase in amount of owners generally, right? Again, that's for the whole space overall in terms of the amount of owners, not for ICP only, of course. I'm talking about the whole space overall. Again, if there's over 600 million owners when it comes to the space overall, wow, I do believe that if there's a hypothetical altcoin season, if it did maybe look better than back in 2021, it wouldn't be necessarily something so shocking to me, but yeah, we'll wait and see. So overall, when it comes to the internet computer, beyond the price slightly recovering, I think that Mission 70 could arguably be viewed as maybe one of the most impressive things that could maybe happen, right? At least in the beginning of this year so far, in regards to ICP. So if that's the case, I'd be pretty happy. But yeah, it's the only time will tell type of scenario. I mean, I can't really do anything about this, but there's only one thing I can do. I can control my patience, right? And I get it, it's not that easy sometimes to be patient, but what can I do? It's the nature of this space. That's the way to take a look at it sometimes, because I can't control the market, right? So the only thing I can do is wait, which is what I'm going to do. Again, but it requires patience though. But I feel like if I already did the hard part, like for instance, discovering the project, dollar cost averaging once a month for like 3 years basically, and also on top of that, staying dedicated and all this, if I've already done all that, isn't like waiting, or should I say quote unquote staying patient, the easiest part for me? Now, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but that's just kind of my mindset. If I've already done the painting, so to speak, right? If I already, draw the design and everything, isn't waiting for it to dry like kind of the easiest part? The hard part was doing the actual design, right? It was painting it. That's the way to take a look at it. That's kind of the analogy that I have when it comes to this space. I mean, it's a little bit different, but again, that's just kind of the way I take a look at it. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to ICP, I'm still gonna stay with my routine, which is dollar cost averaging once a month. That's it. Not gonna do any more, not gonna do any less. Again, that's it. That's just my routine, basically. I like to keep it consistent, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything. But yeah, in the meantime, I did like what I saw recently when it comes to ICP, and I'll be sure to make more updated videos when it comes to this. And yeah, I'll just kind of document the journey along the way. That's pretty much about it. So I want to say again, thank you for watching. I hope you all have a very nice day. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll see y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.